Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to another Fireside Chats with SDR Nation. My name is Michael Galliano, joined by my co-founder, Charlie.
Hey, everybody, and welcome Lainie Noonan from SDR Nation. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Awesome. It's going to be a really good chat, and I think we should start it off with a bit of a cheers. And we've all got some wine, I think, today. Maybe share what you're drinking.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll go first. So I actually have family that's in the wine business, and they have a winery up in Napa. So I'm actually drinking our Viognier. I have a bunch of bottles. Yeah, my aunt and uncle are in the wine business, so I get the fruits of their labor, literally.
I was not expecting that. That's super interesting. I have eggnog and rum. I was just like, okay, it's Christmas time, and so I'm gonna bring a little bit of Christmas flair. And I see, Michael, you brought your red sweater out, so
and my 3-foot tall Christmas tree.
yeah, but super cool about your family being in the wine business. That's awesome.
It's probably why I moved out to the West Coast to be even closer to that. I said sales, I said tech sales, but like proximity, right?
That's
Michael, what do you got?
I got a Merlot from Chile, the Adoba Reserva. Just opened it. I've never actually had organic wine. Don't know anything about it, so I'm gonna see how that goes.
Yeah, give us your review afterwards.
Yeah.
Cheers.
If you spit it all over the screen, we know.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone. Cheers. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's so cool. We maybe we'll get a hookup later, order some wine online or something.
Yeah, a nice discount. You never know. Depends how the chat goes, though.
That'd be sweet. Sweet, cool. So maybe we can kick it off. Would love to know what it's like being an SDR this year of all years. Very interesting year for everyone. I think especially those of us prospecting all day. What's it been like for you?
Well, it's been especially strange for me this year because I also made my first foray into sales. So it wasn't just being an SDR this year. It was also starting as an SDR coming from finance and banking. So it was like a complete 180, trying to navigate all of that, working from home without a team, also while being in kind of an unprecedented year for sales. But I think what I found really interesting about it is, one, I think people are a little bit more receptive to hearing from you because they're also working from home, and kind of everyone's starved of any sort of interaction with people on a day-to-day basis. But I think also what is a little bit different about this year, at least what I've kind of experienced and also heard from people who have been in sales for a little bit longer, is that I think the people that are coming at sales with a little bit more empathy are the ones that are a little bit more successful, and being a little bit less automated, being a little bit more authentic and creative, because I think everyone has ramped up a lot of efforts on the sales side. Like you see so many LinkedIn posts about people saying like, I'm getting hundreds of emails a day. So I think like the empathy and a little bit more authenticity is what's maybe a little bit different about this year in terms of being successful.
That's so it sounds like you've had a really interesting and diverse career. So you told me before that you've had a number of different careers before getting into sales, which I love. Talk us through the path that got you to here.
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely not the normal salesperson. I kind of came into it at a later stage after I've already kind of tried a couple different things. But the way I kind of have thought of my career so far, which is I think a little bit different than a lot of people, is like I look at it as building blocks, and in terms of skill sets, and trying to become someone that's a little bit more well-rounded. So my first internship was at the United Nations, working in politics, like sitting in on Security Council meetings, and I was really interested in that. So I found a lot of the public speaking side of things and diplomacy really interesting. I worked at a law firm in London. I then worked at Morgan Stanley as an intern, and then as a full-time employee. And then, you know, I was looking for something that was a really important skill set when it comes to building your career, and everyone said sales. So I was really interested in making a pivot at that point anyway from Morgan Stanley, and it ended up working out with Bolt, where I currently am. And it's been fascinating this year working
That's
in
awesome.
sales for the first time. Yeah.
That's a wicked background. It's funny. I myself, I actually come from a finance background, so I did finance in
Okay.
college, university, and all that. And I've always found, I've always had a, maybe it's my bias or whatever, but I've always thought that SDRs or salespeople with a finance background have a bit of a leg up and have tended to work out pretty well. I'm curious if anything that you learned through your finance background has helped you in this role, and or any of those sort of various different backgrounds. Like which one of those skill sets do you think is helping you out the most right now?
I actually agree with you. I think finance was definitely really helpful. I was facing off with a lot of really strong personalities, really smart individuals who are heading up a lot of, the biggest hedge funds in the industry. So I think being able to easily converse with those people and having that background makes it a lot easier to pick up a phone call and call a CEO on like a day-to-day basis. I think being a little bit more numbers driven and data oriented is something that's definitely helpful in the seat as a salesperson. And then I'm also doing another job at Bolt where I'm kind of working as an analyst for some of the strategic deals for one of the members of our org. So the finance background comes in. Yeah, it's helpful there. But I'm curious from your perspective why you think that having a finance background is helpful.
Excel chops. To be straight up with you, so that like data analytics perspective, someone who can look at the data that they're creating on a day-to-day basis, call it activity data, what have you, and can easily build out rudimentary models to analyze themselves. And I've always found the SDRs that tended to, or salespeople in general, that tend to be the most successful, tend to be the ones that had a really good pulse on their data and their process and how they create data through their process, and were able to analyze and self-diagnose themselves and figure out where things are going wrong. And it's funny, a lot of folks just don't come out of school with Excel skills, basic Excel skills. And so it's super helpful to have that backbone, I feel like, in sales. Yeah.
Well, I actually didn't either. I was an English poli-sci double major, but that's why I went into finance, because I was like, I need to be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more analytics oriented. So that was my building block at that point. But I was actually studied English and poli-sci. So ask me about 18th century English literature.
Well, I'm sure all that writing and all those skills come into play as well too, though, right?
Oh yeah, I think especially with the email writing as well. I think that's actually where I've been the most successful with like booking demos and stuff. So I think that's definitely come in handy.
Cool.
We've seen it in the community, in the channel, some of the emails that you've shared. You get pretty creative with the screenshots, with the videos too. How do you? My team's always trying to get creative. One of our SDRs has put a wig on for one of his videos. Like, how do you come up with those ideas to stand out when, like you said, someone's getting 100 emails a day?
I think what was very interesting about that question is like, I've never considered myself a creative person. And I really didn't feel like I was, or really like came into that type of work until I started getting into SDR work. So I feel like it's actually something that's very new for me. It's not something I've always been really good at, is like the punny stuff, like finding ways to make myself ridiculous. But I think a lot of the ideas that I have around like kind of funny email cadences are all about like that fine line between something that's like really funny, authentic, and ridiculous. So I feel like I've done stuff like I've written songs for my prospects. So that was something that went like semi-viral on LinkedIn. Because
Awesome.
I've done that. I like make a lot of GIFs of myself, like a lot of really bad puns that expose my dad joke sense of humor.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the reason why those are successful, I think putting a face to a name, I use a lot of GIFs of myself actually. Either like waving or like making signs for people, or with my Christmas decorations when I make a awkward Christmas pun. But I think finding ways to use creativity and make it translate to a person actually being behind that screen, I think that's when it's the most successful. I don't know if you guys have found the same when trying to be creative with outreach.
It's been amazing. There's something as simple as the whiteboard that our team has killed it with this year. And maybe, it's not new. Many teams have done it, but they're drawing like Christmas tree pictures on the whiteboard. Like they had turkeys on them last week. They're just trying to stand out. And almost every meeting that the team books mentions, hey, I appreciated your whiteboard in the email or whatever they did. So it does work. Putting that extra time in to personalize it a little bit definitely works.
Another one that I really like doing, it's in my favorite breakup mail, is like the subject is waving the white flag, and I have like a pillowcase that I'm like waving, and I'm like clearly it's not a good time to connect. Like, I surrender. I'm waving the white flag, and in parentheses it's like, well, pillowcase.
That's awesome. Have you gotten responses and meetings out of
Yeah.
that? Sweet.
Yeah, I have actually.
So much better than the like choose one of the options here. Like, I feel like those breakup emails are very just like self-serving for us because no one ever replies to them. So that's awesome if you're actually getting replies from something. Yeah. Yeah,
people are like, this is hilarious. Like, that's why I'm replying, not because I'm actually interested in both, but because this is ridiculous. And I'm like, anything to book the meetings.
What's it been like, not working? So how long have you been at Volt
now? Since April. So it hasn't. Okay. Yeah, so it's been under a year. I've only been here for a couple of months, but have you met anyone there, like face to face at all, or like any other the SDRs or? So I did, for my final interview at Bolt, I got to go to the office. It was when I was simultaneously working and interviewing, and I was like, oh, I'm sick with the flu back in February, and flew out, did a red eye in San Francisco, and got to meet a couple people in the office. So I met my managers and one of the other BDRs who's no longer at Bolt, but she was great. And I think the people was definitely what sold me on Bolt, but a little sad I'm not there.
Yeah, what's it been like though? Just to, how do you, I'm always curious how you stay motivated in your day to day. We hear from a lot of other SDRs and a lot of them really, their source of energy was their teammates around them, a lot of their peers and the energy in the aisle and things like that. And, when you're sitting at home by yourself, it can be tough to sort of get up for the job and, put in the effort and celebrate those little wins like we're used to celebrating. So how do you keep yourself motivated?
I think at least for the SDR part of my job, I think what I found really important, and this is something I talked to my bosses about early on, is like, I need to find ways to make what I'm doing fun every day. Because I think it's really easy to get into the trap of like being like, oh, I have 50 calls today, I have 20 emails today, I have X, Y, and Z like motions that I have to do today. But I think the reason why I got so into the creative side of things is because I was like, how do I make this fun? Like, these are numbers that I have to hit, but like, how do I keep myself engaged in a way that doesn't make me dread picking up the phone every morning and be like, oh God, I have 50 calls I have to do, versus like, oh, let me build out like some funny sequence that makes me laugh. I don't know if it'll make my prospects laugh, but as long as I can make myself laugh, I think that's part of what has kept me engaged and motivated. I don't know if you guys have found the same thing.
I love that. That's amazing.
Have you been able to connect with some of the non-Bolt SDRs in the community, in SDR Nation, either to work alongside each other or support each other? How's that been?
Yeah, I've actually connected with a couple people in SDR Nation. We had a couple good chats, exchanged some ideas, and I think it was really helpful to see kind of what's working for I think for Lila and we both are selling to similar people. So it was interesting to see kind of what's working for her, like how she's incorporating her AE, like different areas that they're working together. I think all of those, it's really helpful to have that perspective from someone else also sometimes, because you can get in a bubble and you're like, am I the only one doing this sometimes? And you're working from home, and it's nice to also, see that like other people are doing something similar to you sometimes. The camaraderie is very helpful because you don't really get that as much with your teams nowadays, like you guys were saying. Yeah.
You bring up a really cool topic there, actually, that not a lot of people talk about, that SDR AE relationship. Such a key, key piece of the job in a lot of ways, right? You're not only managing the expectations and trying to engage with your customers, but in a lot of ways, you have to build a really strong relationship with your AE. Any tips for all the SDRs out there on how to, best work with your AEs?
So something that I've done is like I've incorporated him in my outreach, which has been really helpful, especially for anything that's, let's say, like a closed lost op or someone that had engaged with Bolt at some point that maybe my AE Owen has some sort of connection with. But I actually have a sequence built out for my AE and I, where I have an email that comes up that CCs Owen on the email. The subject is "Have you met Owen?" ? And I do a quick little intro for Owen. I have a little GIF, of course, because apparently that's my signature, of him waving at the camera, so like introducing himself. And then he makes a quick video and does like an audit of that retailer site and like highlighting a couple areas where they could be losing revenue. So I have him engaged on the prospects that we really want to book meetings with or that are really high priority for him. So that's one way that I work with him. And then also I think we have like really good communication and are pretty organized with how we're doing outreach. We'll coordinate sometimes on LinkedIn or like having him like reach out to people that I'm interested in. So like having that multi-touch approach. But I think people are definitely missing out if they're just incorporating their AE after the meeting is booked. And something else that I think is really helpful as well is we've actually done it the other way where he's incorporated me on the back end. So like when he's managing his pipeline, there's, let's say he hasn't connected with someone since September. I built out this report with one of my bosses where I can see his whole pipeline and see the last time he engaged with someone. So I can like send them a piece of content or something related to Bolt and just kind of help that pipeline get re-engaged if there are certain deals that haven't moved forward. So I think
you're an SDR working the pipeline too. You're really doing everything.
You don't.
I think it's more. It's more so just the teamwork. Like I mean, he's managing so much and has so many deals. So if there's someone that he hasn't connected with in a while, I'll be like, I'll send them a piece of content. Like I don't know if you guys have done anything new or different with like the AE SDR pairings, but I'm always looking for more ideas. So if you guys have any great ideas, I'd love to hear it.
We always, one thing we always try to do, similar to what you said, is hype up the AE so that when that meeting is booked, I love the idea of the gift, by the way, but you're describing them as an e-commerce leader, and for example, one of our AEs spent 3 or 4 years at Shopify. So when we're meeting with e-commerce brands and we talk about his experience at Shopify, right, at pre-meeting, they get even more excited. It improves the show up rate. So anytime we can act as a hype man or hype woman before the meeting, that definitely helps. But I'm stealing the GIF idea.
Totally.
I'll send it to you guys after. Also, during demos as well, what we started doing is Owen incorporates me on the first part of the call, and he's like, Lainie, like, do you want to do like a quick recap of your conversation? Like ask like an initial question. So what we typically do is like, I'll recap the conversation, whatever we were talking about, whether it was like checkout or fraud or asking about their platforms. And then like I asked the prospect, I'm like, am I missing anything there? Like, is there anything else you want to add? So it's like a really easy transition for Owen to get started into the demo, and also have the prospect like kind of reiterate what they're interested in. So that's another thing that we do that I forgot about.
I've got a bit of a future looking question for you. I'd love to know something that you'd want to congratulate your future self on. If you're to go into the future, what's something that you want to accomplish that you congratulate your future self on?
I think for me, I have kind of a vague idea of where I would like to be, but I think what I would consider like a really awesome accomplishment, like I would love to be in some sort of strategy role that incorporates a lot of different building blocks that I've kind of built up, whether it's like incorporating like sales and finance and like really helping shape the strategic vision of a company. Like if I get to a point like that, like I would love to congratulate my future self on that. But if I get all the building blocks, I guess, still working on those, still building the Lego tower.
That's amazing. That's a great goal to have. Are you loving the e-com sector that you're in now, the e-com space?
I don't know. I think it's really fast. It's been fascinating during COVID as well because it's not just the fact that it's growing, but it's the fact that you're watching your prospects' businesses and their business models changing so much. So I think it's been a little bit more of an interesting area to be in during COVID because it's not only growing and there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's also completely changing the way people buy and shop and the way a lot of retailers' businesses are run. So yeah, I don't know if you found that similar, but I found it really fascinating this year.
It's true. Yeah, it is. It's been pretty good year for ecom, and for us getting to talk to founders and the owners of a business is awesome. That's one reason I love SMB. I know, Charlie, your team with SMB, you're talking to the owners of the companies as well, and I think it's a killer opportunity for SDRs and salespeople to get to negotiate, get to sell, get to talk to the owners directly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're running a little bit low on time, so we'll ask you one last question here, and I guess really for for all the SDRs out there, we're hoping, you're only the second one on this podcast, so there's probably going to be only a few people listening, but as this grows and as it becomes something bigger and greater, we hope a lot of SDRs are listening in. What would you say to all the SDRs out there that might be struggling? That might be maybe having a hard month, or just dealing with this remote workforce and how they're working on their own on a day-to-day basis. What sort of words of inspiration would you give to them?
I think something that I've always kind of prescribed to and I've brought to my life in terms of my perspective is that everything is peaks and valleys. And I think not getting stuck in that valley is something that was really hard, at least at the first part of being an SDR. Like I remember August when I transitioned back to the account list that I have now, like I had a really tough August. And I think the way that you can kind of get out of that is one, having that perspective of like knowing that, you're not going to get stuck there. Like it's peaks and valleys, like it's not just life, but I think it's especially applicable to sales because you can't always control kind of what the output is. You can control your controllables, as salespeople love to say. But I think not getting stuck in that perspective is one thing. And I think the ways that I did that, at least where I got out of that kind of trough there, was having fun with it. And I think once you are a little bit more excited and funny and fun in your outreach, I think that really translates to the communications that you're sending out. So I think, finding ways to continue to have fun with it, to connect with your teammates, to attend lots of webinars, to join sales communities, and not just like control your controllables in like I have to do X amount of tasks today. It's like, what can I do that makes it fun, that makes me feel like I have more of a community and also like something to look forward to, I think. So having that perspective that like you're going to get out of it, like you're going to do well at some point, like it just happens, but also finding ways that you can like keep yourself engaged. Yeah, awesome. That's kind of my advice.
That's amazing advice. And you've been just an unbelievable contributor and member of SDR Nation. Thank you so much for being part of the group. And
of course, I've enjoyed it.
And obviously your company's lucky to have you. I love some of the ideas that you have. I mean, we're seasoned sales guys, and I took like 4 or 5 notes here. I'm like, we're gonna do this tomorrow. So really loved it. Thank you for
I can't take credit for all of it. I attended so many webinars. Like I've been such a sponge. Like I've taken so much from like Beck Holland, for example. Like a lot of my email writing comes directly from her copies because I find them amazing. So
I can't. It's just who actually uses it, and you're doing it. That's a big part of it. So give yourself a pat in the back for that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lainie.
I appreciate you guys having me on and for getting me to pop a bottle of wine at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I love it. Much appreciated.